What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. Go over some of the data points, how the week ended, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi did close in the red 0.5%, 27.56 the low, 28.48 the high. During the pre-market, it did show some signs that it wanted to move higher. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason to this that at least I'm aware of, but it did have a high during the pre-market of about 28.62, and then you did have PCE that came out, and that seems to have popped that bubble. And once the market did open, then all hell broke loose. It wasn't just SoFi, it was pretty much across the board. But what was very interesting about today, PCE, it came in lower than the forecast. So the core came in at 0.2, forecast of 0.3 year over year, 2.7 versus 2.8. Very good stuff. Michigan consumer sentiment, a little bit lower than the forecast, nothing crazy. So 55.1 versus 55.4. And I know yesterday's data was seen as inverse, so positive was kind of a little bit more of a negative, but we actually did see today, because of that data, the likelihood of a cut for the October 29th meeting is now 89.8%. So it went up slightly. So it's kind of weird. So we did have some good data. This went up, so optimistic about rate cuts, but it was more a lot of external factors. So Trump tweeted yesterday saying that we could potentially be having a shutdown. We also had a fresh new kind of thing of tariffs. Nothing substantial though, in my opinion, but it goes to show that he's kind of focusing on that. And then you've seen a increase in geopolitical issues. So something might be coming down the pipeline. I think that's what a lot of people are speculating. And I feel that's what caused SoFi and much of the greater market to go a little bit lower. As far as volume today, 36.4 million shares being traded, 64.5 is the average. So as far as today, no news from SoFi, no SEC filings or anything like that. It did close at 27.98. So it's been a very long time since we've seen shorts manipulate it below a key strike price, which in reality, the $28 strike price wasn't really that high, so it wasn't even, I guess, considered a key one, but shorts. So shorts today did return 1.61 million shares, 9.29% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 109.37 million shares overall being shorted. Now we are about 6 consecutive days of the cost to borrow minimum being above zero, so that's always a good thing, shows less and less manipulation. But that being said, you can kind of see right here, shorts were just minding its own business, returning. So they were returning about 2.3 million up until the last little bit. So last 5 minutes of the trading day, and then they hit it just to bring it right below that $28 range, which is what we used to see back in the $7, $8 range, $9 range, for those of you that kind of remember that or have been around for that long. So it's kind of comical. As far as today though, overall 32 million in calls and 9.21 million in puts, and then 45% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. So despite SoFi closing in the red, you do have shorts returning, so that's generally optimistic, because if they felt that SoFi and the broader market was going to go down, they could easily double down and triple down, in fact, because there's a lot of available shares to short. So the fact that shorts didn't, that's bullish. Options, very bullish. In fact, the net premiums did go up 2.4 million just today alone. But quickly going over here, this is the open interest. So like I mentioned, that $28 strike price, you only had 7,000 in open interest. So that wasn't really that crazy of a wall for them to really kind of increase 700,000 shares just to suppress it below 28. Didn't really make sense to me. I don't know, but what do I know in life? Aside from that, you do have the 27.50 and below strike prices considered in the money. So based on these small amounts, you won't be seeing any bump up going into next week. Stay tuned for my video over the weekend where I go over some expectations, where things might be going this week, and whatever else. But aside from all of that fun stuff, looking on the secondary market as well as the dark pool, still see a lot of big transactions. So I think even though we did have lower volume today, a lot of that lower volume was because of algos. And I don't really understand that. Maybe over the weekend I'll do a little bit more research, but that kind of screen that I show you with the flow, like it somehow, I don't know why they somehow pick SoFi sometimes and not. And sometimes the volume just goes higher with algos and it just fluctuates. So if anyone is familiar with that topic, let me know. Why does it seem to change every single day. I cannot understand that. That's something that's like, I like to justify where the volume does come from, but that's always just over my head, why algos seem to be just like a light switch and turning on and off with SoFi. Aside from that, these are all the transactions that did occur on the dark pool, so 5.2, 3.8, and so forth. So a lot of good transactions. So always good to see institutions trading SoFi, even if they are selling. I'd still much rather have institutions doing something with SoFi than algos. But with it closing at 27.98, it landed exactly on this R2. So that's a key real support level. So just kind of watch for that going forward. And then again, stay tuned for my video where I go over kind of some points to really watch for. But if you did watch my video last weekend, I did state that we will be seeing a nice push higher to most likely a new all-time high, which did come to fruition early on this week. But I mentioned that we will be settling close to this R2, and we were 2 cents off of that. So definitely, this is why I like to not really have any emotion when it comes to investing. You just read the data. It is very, very simple. Some people overly complicate it, and of course Trump doing tariffs and other people throwing in some geopolitical issues and whatever else, that skews some things. But for the most part, if everything just goes straight on cruise control, you can read all the data and it pretty much tells you exactly where things might be going. Aside from that, there was no new analyst ratings or real articles of value to come out. Anthony didn't say anything today. SoFi didn't really do anything today. People must have just taken kind of the day off ultimately. Aside from all that fun stuff on the actual chart, you do see a little bit stronger of walls, so willing sellers in comparison to yesterday. Today it did close below that 10-day moving average. It wasn't just SoFi, pretty much a lot of stocks as well did close below that 10-day moving average, signaling the momentum somewhat going down. So again, somewhat just keep that in mind. A lot of people feel that we are kind of overdone, and I think all that stems from Powell, to be fully honest. The fact that he laid that foundation just saying that things are overdone and overly inflated. So that's what caused all of this to go down. But market, luckily enough, is very narrow-minded and only thinks week by week. So as we go into next week, we'll forget Powell. That'll be kind of something else, and then we can kind of move on what the next big catalyst is. So even though we see a little bit of kind of more sellers, I'm not too worried. And like I said, no new analyst ratings or anything like that. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. I put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades. Pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.